popular screen personalities. But what do we really know about them? What are the challenges facing paleontologists in the field? And why does it seem that we're always getting things wrong?
Being a paleontologist is like being a coroner, except all the witnesses are dead and all the evidence has been left out in the rain for 65 million years.
Dinosaur studies have long been riddled with controversy, intrigue, and a remarkable number of wrong turns.
There are so many misconceptions, of course, about dinosaurs. And one of the most prominent that we've had to deal with has been that they're big, sluggish animals.
Tyrannosaurus rex, it wasn't a slow, sluggish dinosaur. It was a scrapper. They said Brontosaurus could never get out of the swamps. Well, I'll tell you, by God, they didn't live in swamps. PhDs at Ivy League institutions were wrong.
Accepted theories have come and gone.
The early paleontologists thought of dinosaurs as being large reptiles, and that clearly wasn't the case.
Dinosaurs were lizards, they were birds.
While museums have been forced to rebuild their exhibits.
There's been some bad mistakes. There's been one for years in the American Museum of Natural History.
Everything we do in paleontology is disproven sooner or later. That's what it's all about.
Join us as we explore the missteps and mistakes along the rocky road of dinosaur discovery. It was their world long before it became ours. For more than 140 million years, dinosaurs dominated the Earth. But they have existed in the minds of man for a mere 160. The last of the dinosaurs walked here more than 65 million years ago. But they have risen from their graves and sunk their teeth into our imagination. What had once been the domain of a small group of intrepid scientists has exploded into $1 billion a year industry. In movies, museums, and mega events such as Dino Fest, the public has marveled at these bizarre creatures that defy the reality of today's world.
We have the concrete evidence, well, the bony evidence for these things, and they're magnificent structures. If you look at a skeleton out on the exhibit floor, it doesn't have any flesh on it. The skeletons themselves, they're like great bridges. They look as real without that skin. Just that structure is so compelling.
They're real monsters. We think we know that aliens are real. We think we know that ghouls and goblins are real. We think we know that demons are real. We know the dinosaurs are real.
This is a dinosaur arm, the left arm of a meat eater. And this object, this wonderful set of hooks, proves a fundamental truth. Dinosaurs are nature's special effects. They weren't made up by Universal Studios. This is not a dragon. This is not a griffin. This isn't mythology. This is reality. This is the finest wonder nature has ever concocted.
In recent years, we've seen an unprecedented explosion of new discoveries and theories. We've also begun to question many of the long-held beliefs about these extraordinary creatures. From the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, paleontologists categorized all dinosaurs as large, lumbering, prehistoric reptiles. This was wrong. In the late 1960s, a new breed of dinosaur hunter emerged, and our overall impression of how these animals looked and behaved radically changed. This includes some of the classic dinosaurs we thought we knew. In pop culture, the Brontosaurus, with its long neck and massive girth, has always been one of the public's favorite dinosaurs. But its very name is a scientific mistake. A specimen of the same creature had been found a couple of years earlier and labeled Apatosaurus. And though many still call the creature Brontosaurus, by the rules of science, Apatosaurus has become the animal's official name. But that's not the only change this beast has undergone.
Well, there are so many misconceptions, of course, about dinosaurs, and one of the most prominent that we've had to deal with has been that they're big, sluggish animals, and no doubt some of them probably were. Clearly, animals like the legendary Brontosaurus. You know, they're often portrayed as animals that had to be in the water because the water would buoy up their great weight. We find that these were, in fact, land animals, much more like elephants.
Brontosaurus was always portrayed in the swamps, up to its armpits in fetid water. But when we started studying the Jurassic soil signatures, this old view was shown to be complete bunk. You don't find Brontosaurus or any of its relatives in a swampy, gunky soil. A swamp should be black. A swamp should be dark gray. This is not a swamp. It's a tropical forest and meadow and floodplain.
Other mistakes have had more to do with how the dinosaurs looked than how they lived.
There's been some bad mistakes. There's been one for years in the American Museum of Natural History, and that's the wrong skull on the wrong animal. We had a skull on our Apatosaurus skeleton that was really more like the short-faced Camarasaurus type of sauropod. And it was only a couple of decades ago that a couple of scientists said, well, that's the wrong head. As we renovated the fossil halls, that was a convenient time to switch the head, get the head right. We did admit to the mistake, but that wasn't intentional. It was a blunder.
Like the Brontosaurus, the 2-ton Jurassic giant Stegosaurus continues to be re-examined and revised. This dinosaur, with its distinctive bony backplates, was first described in 1877 by famed dinosaur hunter Othniel Charles Marsh. Marsh was working from a specimen that was so fragmented, he initially thought the plates lay flat over its back, like the shell of a tortoise. It wasn't until Marsh's field workers found a more complete and better preserved specimen that he realized the plates stood up along the creature's spine. But the question remained, what was their function?
One of the old ideas was that Stegosaurus, of course, had these back plates as a way to protect themselves against animals like Allosaurus. But, in a way, it didn't make any sense because all an Allosaurus would have to do is bend over and come in from the side or go for the head. And the back plates wouldn't have been much protection at all.
Like a lot of theories, you can have two paleontologists with impeccable credentials disagree. It was speculated that the plates could have served as radiators or heat regulators for the animal, sort of like solar panels, or if it turned the plates to the sun because of the massive surface area on the plates, it could very quickly warm the animal up. If it needed to cool off, it could turn the plates against the sun as well. Stegosaurus plates were used for display, not to generate heat, not to cool off the animal. None of those things. We've cut them, we've done histology on them, and there's nothing to suggest they were anything more than display organs, either defensive display or sexual display.
While the debate over the function of the Stegosaurus plates continues, our understanding of the most famous of all dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus rex, has also been called into question. The creature has undergone several alterations in its anatomy and behavior since it was first unearthed a century ago.
Barnum Brown, of course, is the discoverer of the most famous of all dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus, in the Montana Badlands, the Hell Creek Badlands. That place is an amazing place. You practically can smell dinosaurs when you're walking around there. That whole terrain is an extraordinary place. It just looks like perfect for a dinosaur graveyard.
If you look out here right now, what you see are a lot of hills, a lot of broken badland areas, a lot of pine trees, grass. Basically a very dry environment. But 65 million years ago, when dinosaurs roamed this area, the area was perfectly flat. There were palm trees, there were cycads, there were basically subtropical to tropical plants growing here. Dinosaurs would have been roaming all over the plains, tyrannosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, all these dinosaurs, and intermixed with them were a lot of the same kind of animals you'd find in the lower Mississippi right now.
Paleontologist Jack Horner has spent much of his career searching for dinosaur bones in Montana. Recently, Horner and his crew made an incredible discovery that should help shed new light on the tyrant king.
The first Tyrannosaurus rex skeleton was discovered about 15 miles from here by Barnum Brown. He discovered it in 1903. And then this last year, we found 5 T-Rex skeletons within about a mile and a half from where I'm sitting. And before the end of this year, we will have at least 4 of the skeletons out of the ground. This is T-Rex capital of the world.
T-Rex is one of the species of dinosaurs that we can actually make informed judgments. We can look at lots and lots of teeth, lots and lots of arms and legs and skulls and vertebrae. T-Rex was over 40 feet long. The weight would have been 7-8 tons. Those powerful hind legs, enormously strong hips, bird-like stature, and these bizarrely teeny forearms with only 2 fingers on them.
When T-Rex was originally found, it didn't have arms, and they made arms for it, and they made arms with 3 claws because they had an Allosaurus. It looked like it was pretty well related, and it was the best guess they could make. A few years after T-Rex was found, they found a thing called Gorgosaurus. Gorgosaurus had 2 little fingers and was more closely related to T-Rex, so they had a pretty good idea that T-Rex had short arms with 2 little fingers.
The 3-clawed arms were replaced by the 2-clawed arms fairly early on. But it is now believed that for most of the 20th century, the ever-popular Tyrannosaurus rex was mounted incorrectly in museums.
The American Museum of Natural History, Tyrannosaurus rex is really one of the iconic dinosaurs. That it's the one which everybody knows, and especially everybody knew it in its old position when it looked like Godzilla. It was standing up, its backbone was nearly perpendicular to the floor.
But there was one problem. If the T-Rex stood tall and erect, his long tail would be forced to bend backwards and break. So this clearly was not how nature designed the T-Rex.
When we did the dinosaur halls about 6 years ago, we decided to put it in a more modern or active or anatomically correct position. Biomechanically, that's the only possible way that this animal could have walked. If you think of walking as sort of the process of falling forward and catching yourself, an animal which is this large needs to have a big counterweight. So that counterweight is the tail, which stuck straight out behind it.
Now that the T-Rex has been correctly positioned, some paleontologists are investigating other possible misperceptions surrounding the Tyrannosaurus rex. For years, it has been portrayed as a swift and aggressive hunter, the perfect killing machine. Jack Horner isn't so sure. He wants to dig deeper and find specimens that will reveal the evolution of the species over its 3 million year existence.
So that's Jim and I are working.
I have hypothesized that T-Rex was a scavenger rather than a predator. And I think if we find enough stuff in the bottom, enough T-Rex specimens in the bottom, compare them with the top, we'll be able to look for trends to see if T-Rex was actually selecting for particular characters that would help it be a better scavenger. Things like shorter arms or bigger olfactory or different leg proportions. A scavenger doesn't have to run, doesn't have to grab anything, just needs to smell things a long ways away, like turkey vultures.
Jack Horner's contribution to dinosaur research is not limited to his work in the field. He has also served as a scientific advisor on the Jurassic Park films, where the T-Rex was presented as an unstoppable killer. But Horner has his own explanation for its ornery behavior on camera.
T-Rex chases a lot of things around, but he eats a lawyer, right? So certainly with the lawyer, I'd have to say that T-Rex was scavenging.
So lawyer is bitten and then spit out. In the second movie, I'm eaten. Actor playing me with the cowboy hat and the long hair. His is fake, mine's real. Gets eaten by T-Rex and is not spit out. So that's strong commentary, strong proof that I am more palatable than a lawyer.
Today's paleontologists can joke about being devoured by a dinosaur. But in the early days of the science, there were few laughs. It was a time when the study of dinosaurs itself was deemed by many as nothing short of heresy. For much of the 20th century, dinosaurs were thought of as one of nature's great failures. After all, these creatures had all gone extinct. Even the word dinosaur took on a negative connotation, meaning someone or something that had outlived its usefulness. But today's paleontologists consider that metaphor a mistake.
Dinosaurs were incredibly successful animals. They dominated the world for almost 150 million years. And for them to be so successful, they obviously had to have had a good formula for being that successful.
It wasn't until after the dinosaurs went extinct that our shrew-eyed ancestors began to evolve bigger and smarter and more dynamic, eventually leading to us. So if something from the outside hadn't wiped out the dinosaurs, we wouldn't be here.
When scientists first began studying dinosaurs in the mid-1800s, it had already been determined that the Earth wasn't flat or the center of the universe. But the study of prehistoric life confronted the public with two new faith-shaking concepts: evolution and extinction. When Charles Darwin published his theory of evolution, it met with fierce resistance. The notion of extinction was, for many, even harder to accept.
The idea of extinction was heretical. I mean, they would never, nobody would ever propose that God would create an animal that would become extinct because God was perfect. If they found the bones of an animal, it must still be around then.
The bones of dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals have been exposed by erosion for as long as man has been on Earth. Early civilizations in different parts of the world drew their own conclusions when they found gigantic bones or huge jaws filled with dagger-sized teeth.
You can imagine what the ancient Chinese thought